So hello everyone, good afternoon, or is it good evening? You are very welcome to the Techbiz Transformation Series. The objective of this is to facilitate enterprise setup, survival and recovery during and after this difficult times that we are in. The focus really is to consistently deliver meaningful and highly qualitative content that enables you and enables your business as well to thrive. So this is the second of many episodes to come. We believe that this is the beginning of a transformatory journey for you and also for your business. So hashtag Techbiz, hashtag Eco-Innovation. Feel free to post as we go along as those nuggets are dropped by our speaker. Quick housekeeping rule. The first part of the discussion, which is almost like a presentation, will take about 30 to 40 minutes. And the rest of that will be, after that will be questions and answer up till the top of the hour. You can also type your questions in the chat section as immediately they occur to you. You don't need to wait till the end. Now, during the question and answer session, we would allow you, please raise your hand through Zoom, and then we will unmute you and you can verbally ask your question should you wish. So let's get quickly into it. And one of the key questions that people ask is, what is Eco-Innovation Center and what do they really do? And you can see there, it's about using the two critical enablers of innovation and technology to contribute to solving poverty and its symptoms within the continent. And the support is offered to enterprise within the space of learning, which is equipping businesses with soft and hard skills, the kind that we're doing right now, with real-life business solutions and situations. So there's learning. In the space of research and sustainability, it's to enable innovation of social impact products so that we can impact on the sustainable development goals and impact on the larger society. In the space of digital product incubation and acceleration, that we're all very familiar with. So it's about helping you launch your ideas, accelerate and scale your digital products. So that will include like growth strategy, marketing strategy, funding strategy, anything to help your business grow. And should you have an MVP, we're here to, the Eco-Innovation Center is there to accelerate. So if you have an idea or you don't even know where to start, shoot an email to the email you see there. That's believe@ecoinnovationhub.com. You are here because of the topic of today, so we make very quick, very rapid introductions. I'm Doja Ekereche. I am a marketing expert. I've spent the last 2 decades devising, delivering complex business strategies for large brands, particularly in large organizations anyway, and indeed leading multiple teams to execute those strategies to deliver strong results. So my core competence is in FMCG, innovation and renovation within that space. It's interesting to be in this space as well, particularly because I'm quite mobile and I've done this in many parts, many countries in the world. So here with me as well is Muyiwa Dosunmu, Muideen Dosunmu. And Muideen has many facets. I would say a very dogged gentleman since I met him. So he's moved from corporate to being a CEO of his own enterprise. He's moved from side hustle and turned his side hustle to main hustle. So Muideen, it really is a pleasure to have you here to tell us about your app, your business, and teach us how we can commercialize our apps. But would you let people know more about you, please?
Thank you very much, Doja. Sorry, neighbor problems. So quick one, I have experience both in corporate and as an entrepreneur. And I've been doing this, working on GatePass for about 3 years. But before that, I was a management consultant, doing research, working on business plans, building financial models at KPMG, where I worked in multiple sectors, being financial services, power, real estate, oil and gas. So almost 6 or 7 industries. So I have a good perspective when it comes to corporate and when it comes to entrepreneurship. So I think I'll just start there.
Excellent. I can see there you say you're passionate about Africa, so just like Eco-Innovation Center. When they say that if you want to go far, you go together. we're going together. We're definitely going far, impacting the continent. So straight into the topic of today about commercializing your app anyway. And we do know that this country, Nigeria, has bright, intelligent young people who have multiple ideas, want to deliver solutions to solve the various challenges that we have in the country. And of course, naturally, most of the ideas are anchored on technology, and indeed it is so because, I mean, technology is a key lever for agile innovation and then significant scaling as well so that we can have the right level of impact. But the key challenge is most people just don't know where to start from. So they're great ideas, but we don't know where to start. How do I take my idea forward? That's a key question that people ask all of the time. I have an app, or I want to even develop an app. I know I can solve people's problems, but how can I take it to the market? So Muhyiddin, today you're going to help us demystify the commercialization process of an app. So let's go straight into GatePass. I'm going to ask you a real bumper question that would enable you to talk for an extended period. So what is GatePass, right? How did the idea come about, right? And like we said in the beginning, people just don't know where to start from. So where did you start from after the idea? So what is GatePass? How did the idea come about? And where did you start from after the idea?
Thank you very much, Georgia. Sorry, I'm trying to resolve some issues in my compound. For GatePass, I think the idea really came around from my brother. And my brother was visiting a friend, and he just came back one day, and he was very upset. I think he had gone visiting. He had to wait outside the gates. Security people had to tell him to call someone, and there was just like a lot of back and forth. What ended up happening was he came back and he was like, "Look, this is a problem that there has to be a better way to do this." So for over the next 2 to 3 days, he kept on saying, "Muhyiddin, look, we need to be able to solve this. We need to be able to solve this." And I was thinking about it, but quite frankly, I didn't take him seriously at first. And the next thing he comes and it's like, "Oh, let's build this app that will allow people register their visitors." And I said, "Okay, this sounds like it makes sense." And next thing we started doing was, I mean, at this point, I think it was starting to make sense to me. So I did some research, looked at similar things that were happening globally, and I said, "Oh, look, this is actually a big opportunity, and this is something that we can work on together." And from there, we've just kept on building blocks, kept on adding new things to it, and here we are today.
Okay, cool. So remember the last question I asked was, where did you start from after the idea? So that's the part that you need to answer.
Okay, so where did we start from after the idea? So I think in terms of when we had the idea, it was, I mean, we're just trying to put too many things together. We're like, "Oh, what are we selling it to? What do we want this product to be?" Because remember, we started thinking this was going to be an access control solution. So our minds were all over the place. We're like, "Oh, we can use this thing at weddings. We can use this thing at events. We can use this thing at offices." So we're quite excited. But I think eventually we had to come and sit down together and actually try and put some thought into it and think that, okay, do you know what? Where should we start from? What do we want this thing to be, and where do we want to go from here? So hence we now came and started thinking about things like our business model and thinking about, oh, how should we structure ourselves? So for me, it was what I would always say is when you are, or if you're trying to do a business, you just need to at some point focus because your mind is going all over the place. You're having all sorts of different ideas. You're probably having like 4,000 ideas at the same time. Yeah, so I think it was really just us coming back to basics and trying to ground ourselves because we were thinking in so many directions and we weren't getting anything done. So thankfully at the time I was still a consultant, so I was a consultant, so I had access to a number of frameworks and could think it through, could speak to people about it, and then we just started putting some structure around it in terms of. So if you can go to my next slide, please. And we just started putting some structure around it and thinking in terms of what are we actually trying to do. So which industry are we serving? So remember I said we're thinking about doing offices, doing residential, doing events. And we just had to simplify it that, look, where are we starting from and what's the layouts there. And we ended up picking residential. And then we had to now think through that, who do we actually want to sell to, and what do we actually want to sell, and why would they actually get this thing from us? So it was just that, trying to bring structure to all the different multiple ideas that we had to then guide us on the path forward.
So would you say then that for those who are asking, where do we start from? This is the kind of structure to follow. You say you build your business model on the back of these 3 umbrella subjects, and then answering the key questions underneath it.
Yeah, so I'll say you build your business, you start, at least first you understand what your business model is, and you build on the foundation of these 3 anchors, which is your markets, your product and value proposition, and your customers and channel. And I think from there, while it's probably not exhaustive, it gives you enough guidance to be able to not be stuck in the mud and not be picking castles in the sky.
Right, super cool. So you have
so if you go to my next slide, so, and I think one of the tools that we also used was the lean canvas. So lean canvas sort of just helps you think about what you're trying to do holistically, and you can do this very rapidly for any idea, for any business, for anything that you want to do. This is even devolved of doing internet research. It just allows you to focus on what matters, and you can quickly do this in like 20-30 minutes, come up with a rough version and keep altering it as you keep going on. And what this just allowed us to do was keep refining. So if you look at, for example, the extreme right segments, you see like there are a lot of different industries, a lot of different value chain players, and we considered all of that at the very beginning. But then as we had to sort of like streamline and think further, we now kept on dropping some things off. In some cases, saving them for later. In some cases, just decided that, you know what, we're not going to do this. And I think that helps everybody, because you just need focus to execute.
Okay. So for the participants on the call, in the event that they want this document, would you be happy to hand it over in maybe like a PDF? You can make it empty so that everyone has this canvas in the event that they would like to use it as a thought starter for their business.
Fun. So I mean, just to even show how we looked at this from GatePass. So I think from my own view, it was more a thing of, we identified who we wanted to serve. So for us, we said, okay, do you know what? We're going to try and do residential. We won't mind doing offices. We won't mind doing anything else. But our main area of focus is we're doing residential property, we're doing estates. And then we also thought about it that, okay, from a value chain perspective as well, what we're really trying to do is help facility managers or property managers do things better. But I mean, in terms of trying to do that, we also had to think through that, what do these guys use at the moment? How do they solve these problems?
Mm-hmm.
And so we had to do a lot of research, because I mean, nobody's going to take something you're bringing if it's not better for them, if it doesn't solve the problems that their current tools are giving them. So we had to look at how do people solve these challenges now, and it came to a lot of them were using WhatsApp, estate WhatsApp groups, or we're using some other work order management software, which was a bit limited. So from this, we could now see that, okay, look, do you know what is our value proposition going to be to these people? Because we understand who they are and we understand what they're currently doing. So how are we different? How are we better? How are we adding value to them? And I guess for us, we just narrowed in on, look, a whole host of problems, which, I mean, say don't try this at home, but we had to do so many interviews. We had to move up and down Lagos, speaking to facility managers, speaking to residents in the estates themselves, and just really doing a lot of listening to really just understand what exactly the problems were. And based on that, we just decided that, okay, do you know what? If we can win on delivering a superior experience for the residents, reducing costs and operational costs in the estates, providing transparency for everyone to see what's going on, and also giving the estates themselves a way to generate revenue, then we felt that, look, this would be the solution that would help. And that's really how we went about creating the product. And I say last thing is now moving to, okay, so we've defined some sort of products. We've developed a roadmap. We've prioritized what we want to do first. And the next thing is, okay, do you know what to go and sell? How do we actually get it into the hands of these guys, right? And I mean, we had to do a lot of soul searching. I'd say that for the past 2 years, almost every other weekend or every other Saturday or last Saturday, I spend it at estate association meetings, because you're really pitching to estates to say, oh, look, can you use my solution? This is how we're different. This is how we're better. And a number of them have been good. A number of them have been quite bad. But I'd say on the balance of it is just understanding where are your customers and where do you reach them? So in our own case, we've gone to property conferences, we've gone to resident association trade fairs, and we've engaged them at that level.
I think you mentioned something very, very important, which is about research and talking to your potential customers to understand what exactly is solving the problem today, right? Because sometimes people say, oh, I want to build an app, and you say, what can this be compared to? Oh, there's nothing like it in the market. It's one of a kind. Yes, it may be one of a kind, but there's a certain way today that your customer is solving that problem. And you need to understand, how is that happening? What are the pain points? Because it's the pain points that help you develop the improvements into your own offering. And then as well is talking to them helps you fine tune whatever brilliant concepts that you think you may have. So by that way, you fine tune. And like you're saying, the end to end, the entire process of delivering that service, you make it a whole lot more relevant to your customer. So I think you've done a great job on when you talk about research. And it's important also that everyone on this path does in-depth research and quite broad talking to potential customers and even maybe secondary users as well. And by the way, you said you spend time at association meetings. So how do you manage it now with the lockdown?
So it's interesting because I think for a number of the estates, I've gotten into a number of estates WhatsApp association groups. So I think for me, it's also a case of where we are as GatePass now. We've actually been saying, okay, do you know what? We're in 9 estates, and what we've done is we've really just been sitting on those 9 estates and really just trying to solve the problem as best as we can. Because in the past, we had tried to expand, and what we saw was that we were not yet ready. Quite frankly, we're probably not yet ready to expand. We're a bit stretched thin. So we scaled back a bit and just said, okay, do you know what? These estates that we have, let's really try and understand and enrich our solution and make it as robust as it can possibly be. I mean, people may have different circumstances that allow them to take different approaches, but that's sort of where we've been.
See what I did first. Did you see what I did? I reduced the fire first because now the oil was ready to hot.
What is going on?
Interesting times, no? Apologies to everyone. Please go ahead.
Yeah, so I think the last thing I'll just say is that, and this was something that this was a mistake that we made. I mean, obviously, thankfully, we were able to recover from it. But I don't think we did, to be fair, if I take a stance, we did it, we spoke to customers, and we kept on going. But I can't emphasize that you need to, at every point in time, always be talking to customers, always be pitching people, because it helps just create a holistic picture. So you can't be talking to people for 2 weeks or for 2 months, and all of a sudden you go and build, and you're not talking to anybody, and then you come back and say, oh, this is what I've done. You need to make sure that all through when you're planning, all through while you're building, you're still talking to customers, you're still getting feedback, you're still trying to understand what their problem is, how you can make it better, because you just keep on seeing different use cases.
Yes, I was saying on the issue of on the subject of monetization, I just take that word, right? And when you ask startups or entrepreneurs about the issues they are facing, one of the top 3 they will mention will be money. So how do you fund this business?
So I think funding this business has been a very painful process. It's largely been funded. So at this point, it's largely been funded from personal funds, savings, family and friends, and a mixture of grants as well. So I'd say what's one thing I would say at this point is that funding is important, and funding, quite frankly, really helps everyone. But even looking back now, I think we overemphasize, or we just want to get funding without actually knowing what we're going to do with the funding, right? So I see that there are a lot of creative ways you can sort of bypass funding. So for example, I think for GatePass, for us, we really had to think about partnerships and if we wanted to do this alone. So because in the early days, what you discover with funding is more often than not, you're getting funds so that you can pay people. So you're getting funds so that you can pay a developer. You're getting funds so that you can pay someone that will do marketing for you. You're getting funds so that you can get someone to do a business plan or do financial models for you. And what we really had to do was say, okay, do you know what? Between myself and my brother, thankfully, we could do research and build financial models ourselves, but we're not developers, we can't code. So we had to go and find a developer first who we paid to build out the solution. Then as we kept on, well, that's a different experience, but the first iteration of building the solution was quite painful. Maybe not the best value for our money, but I think that's a different story for another day. I think
So you had
so
to
that
change.
I don't.
You had to change developers, right?
So we had to change developers, right? And it was just more a case of the new developer was better or is better, but it was more a case of just someone that you could connect more with and had a better working relationship with. So we got the new developer on, paid them as well. But as we kept on doing it, we reached a position where we said, oh, look, this is what we're trying to do. This is the vision what we're trying to achieve. And they were actually quite interested in it. And then right now, so that's our CTO, and we're able to get them on board for some equity. So I think what you find is that, like, in the initial stage, a lot of people are willing to invest their time and their skills and resources if you're able to really paint the vision to them and offer them something. And more often than not, if you're trying to raise money in the early stages, you're raising money so that you can pick. So basically, you're raising the money so that you can give someone else the money. So in that case, it's really, what's the point when you can just find somebody, partner, and go faster together? And same thing applies to even a bunch of our early locations where we were able to find a former colleague of mine whose family runs a property business, and we're able to get some offtake locations to sort of keep testing and validating our idea. So I'd say those are some of the ways you can go around it. On the other aspects, which was, I guess, one of the main reasons why I was actually even able to quit my job, was we got some workspace voucher funding from LSCTF. So I would always say that when it comes to grants and applications, just keep applying, apply. I've probably done I probably don't want to say the amount of them I've done because I've gotten so many rejections, but I've done quite a number of them.
Give us an idea. You know why it's important to give us an idea?
I've done up to 100. I've done up to 100, definitely.
So it's really to encourage anyone who's right now has been either applying or pitching and having rejections, and somehow they just want to give up. It is that keep trying, keep at it.
Yeah,
at least that's your story.
Definitely. So I think when it even comes to applications, which is funny because they work in an interesting way. So they help you with money and they help you outside money as well. So if I look at LSCTF, for example, we're able to get workspace vouchers, which gave us an office space to work from. So then imagine trying to employ people or telling people to sell your vision and you didn't have somewhere where they could work from. You didn't have somewhere where they could connect. So that gave us that. And that significantly reduced the amount of money we needed to raise. So from there, I could say, oh, look, we can cover most of our costs so I can leave my job. And then if I even look at some of the other applications we've done, so for example, we were part of the top 10 startups in the country last year, and we were selected for the Nigerian Economic Summit Group Startup Competition. Ultimately, we didn't win. We finished around 5th. But the exposure that it gave us meant that some VCs now started reaching out to us after When we, I guess, went to estates, it was also more that, okay, this is something that is starting to make more sense. And when you even just spoke to, because even in trying to expand the team, it's now like, oh, there's some level of upward trajectory. So in some way, it was actually able to help us a bit more than, I mean, I would say money stops nonsense and money helps everything, but it was actually able to help us in a way that at the time money may not have been able to, because it just meant that people that we were trying to hire or talking to felt excited and energized about what we're doing and signed up and took I would say pay cuts, but definitely shelved a greater sum that they could have collected.
You mentioned something important about partnerships, right? And it just reminds me of a very famous saying that says 100% of zero is zero. So I mean, if your business is zero value today, you own 100% of it, it will still be zero. But if you give out 56 whatever percentage you give out in order to make money, then of course there it's a whole lot more value. So that's where you say if you want to go far, you go together. You want to tell us something quickly about this slide? Maybe this is about how the app can make money, right?
Yes.
Is there any area here you would like to highlight? We cannot hear you.
My bad. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So I think my own main takeaways and the main points I want to make on this slide is that you don't need to pick one particular model to go for. You can combine a whole bunch of them. So if you look at the slide, for example, and if I try and pick someone off the top of my head, so Facebook does advertising, but Facebook also play in some of the other spaces there as well. If you look at if you look at affiliate marketing, if you look at transaction fees, there are a lot of people that just combine 3 or 4 together. And I think what's important is you need to understand your business, understand the way you want to serve your customers, because that feeds into how you want to monetize. So if you're someone that wants to go for a freemium strategy, then you probably want to say that, oh, am I trying to do advertising or affiliate marketing, or am I trying to do transaction fees? Or if you're someone that just has a marketplace, then you have a different model. But to me, the slide is, I mean, can be a bit academic sometimes if you delve very deeply into it. But I think just know that you have a lot of options and you can keep mixing and matching and experimenting.
Here it's you were talking about now the marketing side. How do you make your app popular? I wanted to ask you, have you ever lost a customer?
Yeah.
How did you manage that?
I mean, so I think losing customers is very disappointing. I think especially when you get feedback that you know that, okay, you were the one that dropped the ball, but really, I mean, at the end of the day, you can't really dwell on it. You can try, so you really try reach out to the customer, try and understand what you could have done better, try and understand if you can still maintain that relationship, because I'd say we have estates that we got on board, and they used the solution for a while, and then after a while they stopped using it, and it was a mix of things. So in some cases we weren't solving the problems that mattered to enough people. For some it was that it quite frankly wasn't time yet for that estate. Maybe the structure of it, I don't want to sound ageist, so maybe the structure of it was probably not right for that. But I think what was also important, and I will tie this into this point of losing customers, is that at the early stage of your business, you want to try and look for your early adopters and people that sort of have like a natural affinity for what you're trying to do, people that will take a chance on your product, because it's easier for you to experiment and manage the situation with them. But I'd say that in terms of losing customers, you always need to keep bouncing back, keep on moving. There are customers I've lost that it probably took us like 6 months to get them, maybe 4 or 5 visits to their estates. So you can imagine the disappointment when they dropped off.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I think it's really the kind of thing where you know what you're trying to achieve, and Rome wasn't built in a day. You just need to keep taking customer feedback on making your solution better, refining your solution, making it deliver more value, and keep forging on.
And keep learning from your mistakes, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So of the marketing levers that you have up here, which has worked the best for you, right? And what has been your approach on that space?
Um, for marketing levers, I mean, we're a digital business, right? So I'd say we've done quite a bit of social media marketing just to experiment and test it out, and that has worked to an extent. But I think in marketing, you also need to understand your business properly. So for us at GatePass, the buying decision more often than not is made by estates or the property manager. So automatically, it sort of means that the people that will make decisions for us may not necessarily be on Twitter, may not necessarily be on Facebook, or even if they are, that's probably not where they will discover it. So it's more like, oh, do you know what? How do we get to them? So they're probably reading Castle magazine. They're probably going to property conferences, or they're probably going to estate association fairs. So in our own case, I'll say it's a mixture of industry and specific channels, content marketing, and thought leadership. I think those three have been the best for us over the long run. Content marketing, because I guess because of the nature of our product, it sort of means that if you are not in a GatePass estate, the chances of you, or if you're not on social media, the chances of you discovering the product are a bit limited. So what we've tried to do is just create another avenue for people to also discover the product and just interact with the brand. So we had like a storytelling project called Roots, which we've gotten a lot of traction for, gotten a lot of readership for. And it's something that we release every month, just telling people's different stories. And what happens, or what tends to happen, is people read it, people are like, oh, this makes sense. They go to the website, they're like, oh, this helps us. And then they refer us to someone else. So I'd say that's one that's also helped. Another one we've done this COVID period, is, I guess, looking at thought leadership. So we have a COVID resource center. And I guess this came out from really just observing the estates we're in and observing how big challenges they were having in terms of getting the right information to their people, keeping up to date with government updates, and just coping and running as well during this COVID period. So what we did was we created a resource center that really just gave people access to the numbers, knowing what shops, what restaurants were open, getting updates from the government. And that's really helped as well in terms of other people discovering you. So I'd say marketing doesn't necessarily need to be, 5% off, get your copy now. What you're really trying to do is you're trying to connect with the customer. You're trying to make them feel that, okay, this is a brand that is relatable. This is a brand that cares about me. And these are people that understand my problem. And that's what we really try to focus on.
So in your case, we can safely say it's very much a B2B, right? Because you're saying that, this is about estate managers and the rest. But a lot of us participants, we are also thinking of B2C kind of apps, gaming and the rest. So let's talk about, the end chain, right? So when you have the app in the store, you have your app in the store, it's a B2C kind of, offering. How do you get it listed? How do you even get the app listed in the store? How do you drive downloads? In short, just walk us through the art of marketing within the app store.
App of marketing, we're doing the app store. So I'd say like there are a bunch of different things you do. So I mean, if you are generally doing B2C, then what you really need to do is you really need to do mostly social media advertising, right? But even in the B2C context of social media advertising, there's also really understanding who are your customers. So I'll give a good example. So if your customers are photographers, right? So let's say your app is a photo editing software that helps to remove blemishes on pictures, and it's the best thing since sliced bread. It's better than everything else. It's better than Photoshop. If you go and do your advertising on LinkedIn, then you are probably not going to be, I mean, you might reach some photographers, but that's probably not the best place to find photographers. If you are trying to find them, they are probably trying to look for, can I do ads on Instagram? Can I get into their channels like Behance, Dribble, and what kind of advertising can I do there? So that's why I say it's very important to understand who your customers are. Another example might be if you're trying to target mothers, for example, and you want them to download your app. So what you find is that on Instagram or Facebook, you have some influencers that are subject matter experts and have a lot of followers that are mothers or newborn or newlyweds or new mothers. And what you try to do then is you identify these people, you partner with them, and you pursue like an influencer marketing strategy where they're able to help all the people that really is your target market discover the product. So you can, quite frankly, it's just a mix of doing different things, because even if your app is the best app and is on the store and you spend $2,000 on digital marketing, if you're spending it on the wrong channels, your money would go down the drain and it will be wasted. So again, it ties back to the first point, which is actually understanding who your customers are, their behaviors, and where you find them.
Yeah, perfect. I think it's time to go to our audience now, so we can thoroughly take people's questions and make sure that everyone has a good understanding to their satisfaction. Koyi, could you help us, please, in the chat box? Or any questions? Could you post your questions into the chat box, please? Or raise your hand and we will unmute you so you can ask your question verbally.
Hello.
Hello, hi.
Hi. I know, sorry, you can see Felua on the screen. I think my daughter used this Zoom class. My name is Tokunbo, right? Yes. So I'm looking at, I've been listening from the beginning, and I have a few questions. Now, I have an app, though it's not launched yet. We are still testing, and the second phase of testing. I still have my regular job. It's a B2C. It's a B2C, and we are still testing. But it's been challenging. I've been funding it for my salary, so and it's a bit expensive. But then it is what it is. Now, I have 3 questions. Number 1, how did you define your pricing? Because that seems to be a major challenge. I've changed the pricing like 3 times now, though we haven't rolled out. But at every time I keep wondering, how do I determine it? Nigerians don't like to pay. I'm sorry to say that they don't want to pay for things, right? So how do you best, the developer advised me to do in-app purchase, create some modules free. Sure. It's tilts towards investment, right? So make some modules free, and then they will pay if they want to access the meat of the app. So that is the one that I'm using right now. I haven't launched, but that's the one we're going to deploy. But I'm wondering, is there a better way or other ways where I can get some money? Because I really don't want to go the route of investors right now by going to pitch. I know you pitched, but I really didn't want to, because I know they can be pushy. I really don't want anybody pushing me because I'm still working. So I just want to take my time and do this thing. Yeah, that's the first question. Then the second one, the forum, you said you went for a competition or something. Nigeria Economic Startup Forum. How do you find these forums? What do which trade associations, I'm sorry to use the word trade, but I mean, which association or something do I join, or do I, well, I'm not a techie person, so it's challenging, right? That's why I had to find a developer. Luckily, I met a very good one. Somebody introduced to me. We're working hand in hand. Then the third one, how did you set up your structure? That's also a challenge. At one point where we had to load the back-end data, I had to hire somebody like a virtual assistant. I was just lucky with that virtual assistant. She was able to understand all those financial terms, and she loaded the entries perfectly well, and we ran with it. But she's done. It's like just an interim contract, and then she's gone. right? So, but I don't have any staff, nobody, because I have to pay. So I'm not hiring until I need.
Sure.
So how did you set up your structure? But I still struggle with that.
Sure, fantastic. So I think when you were talking, I think there are a number of things I could relate with. So I think if I start from the beginning of how do you fund, and then just lean into how you price. So the reality is, like, from funding, I would say I'm very lucky that I've been doing this with my brother, and I'm also very lucky that I'm still relatively young. And quite frankly, I don't have a lot of responsibilities. I don't have children. I don't have school fees to pay. So quite frankly, like, things are not that difficult for me if I put it in that context, right? So this was something that we started when we were working, and we kept on pushing it. And it reached a point where, quite frankly, against my mother's advice, against my brother's advice, I had to spend the better part of a year convincing them for me to allow me to resign. And really what I tried to resign to do was to set up some structure. So what I'll say is, please don't quit your job if you don't have to. Please don't quit your job if you don't have some sort of making it sustainable. In my case, me and my brother made a decision at business level that I would quit my job so I could focus on it more and get it to a certain level, while he would be able to continue contributing on the financial side. So that's one. In terms of pricing, I'd say that your price, I've probably had like 20, if not 30 different pricing sheets. So I'd say your price constantly changes. What I would say though is that the thinking behind pricing was, okay, we looked at how similar apps were priced in other jurisdictions. We looked at how apps in our own industry were priced. And then we spoke to customers. And from a lot of people, like, I've spoken to so many estates, and when we first started talking in the beginning, we said, oh, 4,000 naira per household per month. And we're like, yeah, it's nothing. Some estates were like, what? It's nothing. Some estates were telling us, no, they want to pay 10 naira per GatePass we create. And we're like, oh, what's it? So I think it's, for pricing, you really just need to, it's almost like a science and art. You need to understand how everyone else is priced. What value you are personally trying to deliver as well. And then you just make a balance, and you also need to factor in your own costs, because the reality is, if you have, depending on how you built your app, you might have different costs. And if you don't factor in properly, then you have a business that doesn't recover costs. So that's for pricing. But it's not, for that one, I'll tell you, just keep doing what you do. I'll summarize it as, look at what your competitors are doing, look at what is happening in other markets, and think about how you want to deliver value. For funding and applications, I think there's a site called Opportunities for Africans, and there's a site called AV4CA, I think, African Venture Capital. I'll try and look it up and provide it to people at Eco Innovation Center so they can send it out to participants. But there are a bunch of sites that generally just keep posting opportunities, and I guess we just keep applying, both local and foreign as well, because we've also interacted with a number of foreign VCs and we've gotten different levels of feedback. The last thing I would say is, in terms of you funding and not wanting to use investors, and
at this
having
stage, at this
stage, yeah,
why
definitely,
I'm
and having
still working. I don't want my employer to see me on the podium. That's why I don't want to use.
No, so that's fair enough. So what I would say for this is that, like I said, I actually generally encourage people to take their first steps with their own money, because I think the way you spend your own money, you're generally much more creative. It hits you in your soul when you're spending your money, so you are not wasteful, right? So I think we've learned a lot of lessons on our own money that I don't think we would have wanted to learn with other people's money. So that's one. Two is also that, in terms of for your employer, and I mean, to me, early on, so it really depends on your relationship. I had the conversation with my managers and my partners at work. And even before I resigned, funny enough, I took time off work. I took three months of work to first go and see what I could do. So I didn't just wake up one morning and say, oh, this thing makes sense, and drop my letter and go and start suffering. No, I first tried to understand how things would be outside. And I think to your last question, which is processes, that is literally what I've spent the last 1 year doing since I left. Because what you find is that when you're moving from contractors to some sort of a formal team, a lot of different issues keep coming up. There are a lot of things you need to standardize. You need to make sure that everything that you've done is documented, and the idea does not reside in your head anymore. Because that you understand how you want this particular screen to be does not mean that the developer that you just got, that hasn't been in your dreams, that hasn't seen all your suffering and all the people you've spoken to, would understand it. So you need to just keep documenting. I think that's one thing for processes. Just document. I don't think there's anything more important than documenting.
Okay, thanks so much. One last question.
Just to add one thing to that point on the forum for pitches and grants and the rest. I would say let's leverage what Muhyiddin had said earlier about networking. So there are lots of tech communities, whether WhatsApp communities, Instagram pages, particularly, and even Twitter. If you follow those pages, there are quite a number of them. Usually those grants and those kinds of pitches are also posted in there. So you start to see the multiples that are available and the ones that are relevant to you.
All right, yeah. Thanks so much. There was one question I forgot, sorry, before I go. The regulation, how do you know which regulation that guides your own industry? You know, so Nigeria, there's a fine line between tech and we really don't have.
Sure. So I'd say for regulation, it also boils down to a lot of research. So we do a lot of research around what the regulatory landscape is in terms of what's expected from property companies, what's expected from technology companies. In our own case, I'll say right now, the major regulator is more NCC, and it's more about compliance with GDPR, NDPR, privacy, and information security. So in our own landscape and review, that is more the regulation that affects us. But I mean, if you're doing like an investment application, then at that point you're probably dealing with SEC. You're probably looking at what funding requirements you need to have, what form of liability or insurance cover you need to be able to offer to your customers, and a bunch of all of that. So I think for regulators, it's just understanding what industry you're in, what part of the value chain is overseen by someone else, and just researching the relevant regulation.
Okay, I think we should take questions from other people now. Maya, are you there?
Yes, Judge. Yes, Judge, I'm here. Apparently, we have nobody who wants to ask a question.
Okay, great. Any question in the chat box?
Not at all. I just want asking for Muhyiddin's contact info.
So I think you can send me an email at muhyiddin@gatepass.io. And I also think that they'll probably share the document, and then it's in the document as well.
Okay, excellent. I think we're right on the top of the hour. Coincident, in the absence of any other question, can we move on? Silence.
Yes,
okay.
Yes, of course. We can.
All right. Okay, that's fine then. I think first is Muhyiddin, thank you so much. It's been quite an interesting one to hear your story and have you share it. Thank you for the transparency, and thank you as well for taking the time, of course, to go through the depths of it. For our participants, thanks for the time, and it's great to always have you join us. We have our next webinar happening next week, and everyone, as always asks about money, about funding, and we have a really powerful speaker who actually is from South Africa, who will be sharing with us on how we financially fireproof your new business, especially to know where to put your money, how to safeguard the money, so everything is not thrown down into one path without getting the necessary returns from it. Creating the right financial model for your business, which we all know that we all very much need, because finally, money answers all things, right? And of course, while you're developing that business, are there other paths that can be generating income for you while you're developing the business, especially if you don't have the luck of being in paid employment and in the middle of it also be building a business. So that's our next webinar coming exactly at the same time. Next week, you will see the poster also coming up. Before we round up, I would ask Muhyiddin, is there something that we haven't talked about that we ought to know?
Yeah, so I think I'd actually want to end on the note that doing things, I guess building your own product, doing things is hard. So I'd say sometimes it might look glamorous, but actually quite difficult. I don't think people don't really talk about how you doubt yourself, how you think, am I really the person that can do this? Am I throwing my future away? Nobody ever really talks about how you go through that thought process. And for me, I mean, obviously, this might sound extra, but obviously there are times as well where I've been overwhelmed by it all, and I probably even just cried, because it was just like, you know what, am I actually going to fail? How am I going about this? So I'd say that you really need to do managing yourself and managing your own emotions during the process. So you need to, I guess, lean on your support system, really reevaluate and think about why you're doing what you're doing, and also just accept that you may fail. It may not work well, but what's really important for you is to keep on coming back, keep on going on. Things don't become perfect overnight. It's okay if you need to go back to work to raise more money and then come back and keep doing your thing. That the founder of Nike did that 2 or 3 times. So it's okay if you need to take a break, step back, and keep going on. And yeah, I think for me, that's just what's important. That just it's also a mentally draining exercise, and you should also just look after yourself while you're doing it.
Thank you, Muhyiddin. That's the power of resilience. You fall, you dust yourself up, you get back up again. But in the meantime, you have to take care of your mental wellness. Excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. See you again, same time.
Yeah, Georgia, we have a few questions.
Oh my. Okay.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. So so I have someone here saying, I built a prototype app for bridging the gap in food supply chain in Nigeria. What will be my first step? Is it to meet a developer or to get my business plan?
So I'd say I wouldn't say do a business plan. So a business plan is quite exhaustive. I'd say more you need to have like a requirement document. So you need to, on some level, be able to summarize what it is you're building, what it is you're trying to achieve. And that's sort of what you take to, and I won't even say you take it to the developer first, you take it to the designer first, or the UI person, because that person will first say, okay, look, what are you trying to achieve? You're trying to allow people order farm products from this. And that person would then conceptualize it, develop the screens, and those screens are what the developer would then build. So from hindsight, I'd probably never recommend just people going in to develop immediately. You need to be able to agree, okay, this is what I'm trying to do. You need to draw rough sketches, and you need to have someone fully develop like some UI prints for it or some mock-ups, and then you develop. But at the same time that you're doing all of this, you also need to have some business level documentation that sort of summarizes the idea and that you're able to use to engage with either potential customers or potential investors. Because I'd say even before we had a product ready, we're already telling estates that, oh, we're trying to do this, this. We're speaking as if the thing was ready. We had the mock-ups and the prototypes on our phone so we could show them. And even that we're able to get more inputs, because you waiting and saying that, oh, this thing is in development, while they're developing, I'm just going to sit at home, and then when they're done, I'll go and engage. It doesn't really work. You get a lot more feedback that makes you constantly iterate what you're doing if you just have this strategy. So I think that's one way to go about it.
Okay. Can you take another question, Muhyiddin?
Sure. I mean, for me, I think I won't stretch it, but I'm I'm fine to keep going for like another 20 minutes. I just have to leave at some point to break my fast.
Okay, thank you. So the question is, how can we gather data to get exactly what customers need? Initially, our app tackled the problem, but seemed to not be what customers needed.
So for this, I guess there are two answers. So one, I guess the reality is that Nigeria is not the most. I mean, there's data, but we probably don't have the cleanest and most structured data. So one is there's some data sources that can help you or guide you in the right line. So maybe things from MBS, things from World Bank, and all the general Euromonitor, Statista, some of the global research repositories. But there's also you just doing your own market research, because I'd say that nothing really beats talking to customers. So what tends to happen is that you saw the research, you saw the numbers, and you build based on the numbers and not based on talking to customers. And when you go and meet customers are like, no, I'm not sure. And this thing you're saying is a nice to have. So I think, which I guess was the point I was trying to make on the prototype thing, is that at every point in time, you should always be talking to your customers. There should never be a point in time where you're not. Even before they're your customers, you should be talking to them. You must always keep talking to, like, you need to find them wherever they are, wherever they may be, and just keep talking to them and understanding who they are and understanding how they behave a bit better. Because even if you talk to them at the beginning, the way they think changes across the life cycle of you developing. So you just need to keep talking to customers. I'll say it again, talk to customers, talk to customers, talk to customers.
Wait, and I think you mentioned it also at the beginning where you talked about you having conversations with estate managers, with residents and the rest. Every single user within the value chain has to you have to have a conversation, with them, with their buyer persona. So in real terms, right, while we may not have huge data from, the Bureau of Statistics, we definitely have information at our fingertips because Nigerians are always open to talk to you. They may not say it in the nicest of ways, but they will give you the information. The other thing, of course, is that Lagos is not Nigeria. If you are offering a service that is for pan-Nigeria, you should try as much as possible not to use the feedback of a Lagosian for what will happen in Owerri or what will happen in Ekiti, right? Because the idiosyncrasies are completely different. So the talking to customers or potential customers or your buyer persona, and even the levels of the value chain. For instance, somebody who's in food wants to probably talk to the farmer, talk to the distributor, talk to the wholesaler, talk to the final consumer. Everyone who's going to be touched within the chain, you have to understand them end to end.
Yeah, that was a great point. I think to even just highlight how important this is. So I'd say at the beginning, we were probably more skilled in terms of talking to, so even though we're doing a B2B solution, obviously as residents ourselves, we connected more with the problem from the resident perspective. So we built the solution and we tailored a lot of our engagement towards residents. But what you then find is you need to carry the facility manager along, you need to carry the property developer along, because they probably have a bigger say, and two, they actually sort of facilitate people using it and the most activity, because they're the ones who would need to communicate to residents. They're the ones who will need to collect money from residents. So you just need to make sure you carry all stakeholders along, because if not, you can lose people along the way or not deliver enough value for someone that's required for the other person to be unlocked.
Okay, thank you, Muhyiddin. We'll take the last question. So where's the best place to get affordable but quality developers, in your opinion?
So look, I will be very honest, and I'll say that finding developers has been an extremely, and I'm very, very nice, and I'm watching it down here, has been an extremely painful process. And it's been a bunch of different things, right? So it's communicating properly. Sometimes it's maybe we were complicating things. Sometimes it just felt like unprofessionalism, but they're just a whole bunch of things. But I think at its core, what you realize with what it came down to was we're not able to afford quality developers, which is how I would put it. And then we now probably were making concessions. Right now, I would say what you can find is there are a lot of good junior level developers. So you can probably get someone either working at Andela or trained by Andela, and they can do your projects for you. Obviously, there are some issues with that because they work part-time. But in our own experience, I think we've used a company called Stuten. So I'd say I can definitely vouch for them because they've definitely simplified a lot of things for me at the junior developer level. So they have people that are well-trained, very professional, do their work well, very nice young kids. So I definitely recommend Stuten. For middle level or senior level developers, then, I mean, at that point, you're trying to get someone who's experienced, who probably works at Microsoft or Andela or a big company. And
just a second, Maiden. Since I've just put up your comms, right? And this phone number, are you reachable on this phone number?
Which one is that? The 0802?
The very last one, 818. Is that
yes,
visible on your screen?
Yes, I can be reached on that number.
Okay,
but
great.
that's I can be reached on that number. That's a GatePass number though. So if I would probably prefer giving out a different number so that it doesn't,
You want to give the number out now?
Okay.
No, up to you. No, please.
Yeah, so that's fine. That's fine.
So that I mean, for people who want to ask more questions and get your references on exactly where to get human resources.
It's probably easier for them to send me an email.
Okay,
that I can guarantee I would respond to. For numbers, it may be a bit sketchy.
So what we have up here is hello@gatepass.io. Is that it?
No, so they can send it to my own email, GatePass email, so muidin@gatepass.io. So that's in the presentation I sent you.
Okay, perfect. So please reach Muidin directly via email so you can get your references and any maybe specific questions concerning connecting you within the network. That will help, no?
Sure.
Okay, excellent, great. I think Connie did say that was the last question. So I know you want to break your fast, right?
Well, it's not yet. Sun hasn't set.
Okay, excellent. Okay, that's fine then. I think it's a great time. Thanks a lot again. Again, we thank you and thank everyone still on the call and for the questions that came up even later. I think it just tells us that this is a real pain point and people need help. People need support. I'm sure within your network of people who who have apps and who have successfully commercialized apps. It would be nice if you also connect our participants in the event that people need mentorship or people need some form of coaching within the process, because it takes a village, right? So we're counting on your support continuously, Muidin. Thank you so much.
No, that's fine.
And thank you, everyone, and thank you, Koinsola.